Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners YouTube Live. My name is Brandon Drumm. I'm here with Parker Thune, Spencer Forsythe's on the board, running everything for us. And
No
there's
lava.
no lava lamp. And
No
Parker,
lava.
why is there no lava lamp?
I figured, you know what? I had the lava lamp on last week, and what happened Saturday was I stood in cold rain for 4 hours and watched Oklahoma lose to a really bad football team. So I just figured, you know what? Whatever good juju there was surrounding the lava lamp vanished this past weekend. So we'll see what leaving it off for a Wednesday does.
Yeah, he didn't have it for Kansas. That was a W. He had it for Baylor, and he had it for, and he didn't have it for Iowa State because he forgot. And he had it for Baylor, and he had it for West Virginia, Big L's. So why not? We're here for the people, Parker. Here for the people.
So I'm here to please.
Yeah. All right. Are you going to do some tricks for us too? Parker's turning tricks now. He's here to please. Yeah, there's a big game today, or not today, this weekend. There's a big game this weekend. There is a big game on right now if you're big into MAC competition, big Western Michigan, Central Michigan. Hey, look, it's essentially OU versus West Virginia is what it is record-wise to an extent on right now on television. So that's where we're at right now as far as. No, you can't make fun of anybody if you're Oklahoma at this point because you are them. You are mediocrity at this point. That hurt to say, actually. But there is a big game this weekend, 6:30 p.m. kick, Bedlam on ABC. And it's a night game, the last game of the season. Oklahoma finally got their third night game of the year. And it's going to be cold, but hopefully it'll be a raucous crowd, and hopefully it will be a really good game because there are some really good targets on campus this weekend, and the visitor list is plentiful and deep. And you have the likes of DJ Hicks, 5-star defensive line, Texas A&M commit DJ Hicks, his teammate from Katy Paytow, 4-star, 2023 linebacker, Damion Sanford. You have 2023 defensive lineman Ashton Sanders coming in. Those are going to be your 3 official visits. And then after that, you've got Peyton Bowen, Jackson Arnold, Caleb Hicks. You have PJ Adebawore. You've got Caden Green. You have
potentially Caden Green. Potentially. They play in St. Louis Friday night, so probably not getting back to Kansas City till about 2 a.m.
Yeah,
that one's kind of hanging in limbo.
Well, good thing it's a night game. They can make it.
Yeah, I know the rest of the LSN crew, Isaiah Mosey, Williams Nwaneri, etc., definitely not coming, but Caden's a maybe.
Okay. Well, you got PJ Adebawore coming down. There's just a Jacoby Johnson. Trying to think. Eric McCarty.
Zadavian Sims.
Huh?
Zadavian Sims.
He's going to Michigan State.
Is he?
With his mother. Yes.
Okay, you got David Stone.
Yes, David Stone. David Stone will be there.
Grant Bricks, 4-star offensive lineman out of rural Iowa. Yeah, he's going to be in town.
And you may have you may have some few commits from other places there. I guess that's as much as we can hint at right now.
You may. So, Taylor Wine, did we already mention him?
Yes, Taylor Wine will be there. So will Kendall Dolby, the JUCO defensive back. I expect Kendall Dolby names to watch this weekend as far as like if you were going to be on commit watch would be Kendall Dolby, Ashton Sanders, and Taylor Wine. I think those would be the 3. If you were actually going to sit there and say, okay, these guys are going to come in, they could potentially end up committing, those are going to be the ones that we're going to be watching really close. I'm not saying that Peyton Bowen won't flip. I'm not saying that DJ Hicks won't flip or Damion Sanford. I just don't expect it to happen on the visit per se, or at least publicly after the visit. How about that? So, I mean, there's a lot of things at play this weekend. So the atmosphere needs to be big time if you're an Oklahoma fan. Like, it's got to be loud. I think people need to understand they've got to show up and be loud. If they look outside of NIL and donating to, the Crimson Cream Collective, Strength and OK with Gabe Eicher and Dusty Dvorak, then the Norman NIL, One Oklahoma, and I think the Boom Crew. If you're not donating to that, the best thing you can do is show up and be loud. That's it. That's literally your job as a fan. Show up, be loud, participate. It's going to be cold. You might as well move around and stay warm and scream. I don't know. I mean, Parker, like, outside of this weekend's visit list, what are some of the things you're looking for on the visit list, actually?
Yeah, well, I think obviously, as you mentioned, what kind of headway can Oklahoma make with Damion Sanford in particular? Because we know that DJ Hicks has a strong affinity for Todd Bates, for Oklahoma. He was committed behind the scenes to the Sooners. We know that the relationships there are very, very strong, and the pull there is very, very strong. But this will be Damion Sanford's first trip to Oklahoma for a game day. And so what kind of impression can you make upon him? Because as we talked about, Brandon, I think everybody kind of understands the primary reason why DJ Hicks went to Texas A&M. But beyond that, the relationship with Damion Sanford was a significant factor there. And so as we've talked about, with the situation being as it is in College Station, and for those that have been living under a rock, it's not good. It kind of seems like those two guys are going to end up going anywhere but Texas A&M at this point in time. That doesn't necessarily mean Oklahoma, because as you've noticed, a lot of these schools that have been in pursuit of DJ Hicks for quite some time, or have ramped up their pursuit once again since things have kind of started to spiral out of control for A&M, all those same schools have also thrown an offer Damion Sanford's way, which is a pretty solid indication, Brandon, that relationship between those two is real tight. Because if you feel like you can get DJ Hicks without Damion Sanford, well, then why are you offering the kid? Why are you even bothering? Right. And so this is going to be crucial for Oklahoma to make a strong impression on Sanford, because if they do, I think they can vault themselves to the front in this recruitment. Because are they in technicality committed to Texas A&M? Sure. But how solid is that commitment right now? I don't think anybody in the recruiting industry is convinced at this point that it's anything but a wide open race once again for DJ Hicks as well as Sanford. So I think that is the most crucial task at hand for Oklahoma this weekend, is sell Damion Sanford on the Oklahoma experience. Because if you can win him over, you already won DJ Hicks over. Right? You got him wrapped around your finger. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to end up signing completely independent of some other factors. But what it does mean is, if you sell his best friend, if you get his best friend convinced that he's a fit at Oklahoma, then you start to feel pretty good about those two signing with you come mid-December when early signing day rolls around. So, yeah, I don't think there's a single visit this weekend that matters more than that of Damion Sanford. And as I mentioned, I think you look at some of the unofficial visitors in the class of 2024, some guys going to be here for the very first time. And I think Oklahoma has a real chance to make a move with some guys that already, just at face value, I like. And I like where Oklahoma stands in their recruitment. I mentioned Grant Bricks up front. A guy that I didn't mention is Aaron Flowers, 4-star 2024 safety out of Forney, Texas. And one of the things that we've talked about repeatedly over the course of the last few months, Brandon, is that Oklahoma really seems to be trying to establish a stranglehold on that northeast side of DFW in the class of 2024. And they already got Sammy Omasigo committed. in the class of 2023. That was a big step in that direction because he's tight with a lot of those elite players in the 2024 class from that area and from that district. Nigel Smith, that's another guy going to be on campus this week, but we've talked at length about guys like Peyton Pierce, guys like Xavier Filsaime. Throw Aaron Flowers in there as well as another guy that Oklahoma would really like to have from that vicinity to help establish a nucleus in the class of 2024.
Yeah, no, I agree. The whole northeast side, east side, and even kind of that 121. If you draw a line down 121, the highway that goes from west to east or east to west, whatever, across the metro or DFW metroplex, and you go north, Oklahoma is the team for a lot of those people there. And so if you are Oklahoma and you add to the quote in-state, if you will, if you draw that line, kind of like what Miami did and Schnellenberger did when they first got to Miami, and they had the line down I-4, and it was the state of Miami, and they drew I-4 south was all the state of Miami is what they called it. And they wouldn't try to get all the best players from there. And essentially, I think that's what Oklahoma is doing is they're drawing a line across Highway 30 or 121, whatever one you want to call it, north. And they're saying that's the state of Oklahoma, and everything up all the way to the Kansas border or even up to Wichita, I would say, is the state of Oklahoma. And that's where you go and you just get all the best players within that region. And because you are the team in that region, you're the closest big university, P5 university. And that's what Switzer did. That's what Stoops did when they first got there. They just dived right down into that area and went, bam, we're going to get the best players we possibly can from that area. We're going to get the best players from the Kansas area, the best players from West Texas, and they're going to bring them all to Oklahoma. And then they're going to spread out and start grabbing extra pieces wherever they feel like they have the best relationship with said players, and make that be kind of their formula for recruiting. And you're starting to see that with Oklahoma in 2024. You saw that a little bit in 2023 when they started picking out the DFW a little bit early on, and then they spread out real quick to the rest of the nation afterwards. So I think that's a great formula for Oklahoma. Before we talk even more towards that and the recruiting, let's talk about, have you heard the rumor about two players being suspended for laughing?
That's the thing. That's a rumor.
That is a real rumor, and people are buying it like hotcakes right now too.
Well, I know where that rumor is coming from, and suffice it to say, it's not the first rumor that has been propagated from that source this week. And the first one turned out to be bogus. That's all I'm saying.
So, anywho, I have asked people around about it, and I guess there was an incident in the locker room, but it was from younger guys. Like, I was told it was younger players. I haven't got any confirmation that some major players. Of course, I'm not done digging on it. So, number one. So I'm not saying there's not 100% validity to it. I'm just saying right now, people are saying, what are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about? And this whole Danny Stutzman crap that people keep throwing around. Like yesterday, there was literally people going around saying Danny Stutzman is being processed. That was a thing yesterday. Danny Stutzman was being processed off the team after he had 14 tackles.
Yeah, imagine watching Brent Venables' press conference yesterday.
I know,
morning, hearing him glow about Danny Stutzman and how highly he thinks of Danny Stutzman and how skewed the public perception is of Danny Stutzman, and then having the gall to regurgitate that nonsense on social media.
Oh my gosh, it is. Oh my goodness, like. Literally, so that happened, and I know for a very fact, while that rumor is going around, Danny Stutzman is in a meeting with the defensive staff, watching film and taking notes, but he's being processed. Gotta love the rumor mill from people that want to be insiders. It's the best. Anyways, there is a question from Mongo 5817. Thank you so much for the $20 in the super chat. How many commits does OU have in the 2024 class by August of next year?
Oh, August of next year? Oh, boy. There's going to be a lot.
At least, I will
20.
say at least 11 or 12. At least 11 or 12.
Okay, beginning of August or end of August?
Yeah, that's
I think by
that's
end of
the
August,
key.
they have 20. I would say by the beginning of August, they have 15.
That's fair. I'll go 11 or 12. I'll keep it on the lower end just because I think by the end of I think August next year may be the hot year. I think July and August. I think people need to understand with Venables, May, June, July, and August are going to be the months that they just start raking in commits. So it depends on how early they start getting those commits, I think would be why I say 11 or 12. Now, if they start in May and they start really like they did last year, where in May they got 5 or 6, June they got 5, and then bam, July, it was like, pow, it all took off. So, yeah, I think it all depends on how early they start getting those commits. Just because of Venable's rule, like, I mean, as you see, there's not everybody makes a big deal about the visit thing, right? Like, oh well, you got to drop them because they're visiting. That's not the rule. That's not how it works. They don't drop them because they took a visit. Now, what'll happen is they'll just start recruiting over them. If they feel like there's any chance of losing said player, they start recruiting over them before the player can even get going. You saw it with Colton Vasek. I mean, you started seeing not just offers, but you didn't see offers until after he decommitted, but you saw Oklahoma recruiting other people, keeping them very hot, very warm. And then bam, the second he announced, literally within hours, you had multiple offers out. And that's because that's how they're going to do it. They're not going to be left hanging. But I do respect the staff for that a lot. You're muted.
You got to cover your bases, right? I mean, like,
yep.
You can't, especially in today's day and age, man. And it's all evolving so quickly in front of us. But I think of a tweet from our own Carl Reed, 24/7 Sports national analyst today. And he basically said, look, in the transfer portal these days, there are guys in the transfer portal right now that don't even know they're in the transfer portal because there are schools working back channels to let the people around them know, hey, we're bringing him to our program and we're going to get him in the transfer portal. And we're going to make this happen. So college football has changed so much over the past year and a half, and it's going to continue to change. And it is as important as ever that you do not get left out in the cold. And that's part of ensuring that what you just talked about, Brandon. It's part of making sure that you have contingency plans for your contingency plans, as we've discussed before.
So there's a lot of people in the chat saying Danny Stutzman sucks. Look, he's far from perfect.
Okay, yeah, look, okay. Can we
No, I want to quote Bert Venables of my question yesterday because he literally laughed and took a shot at people saying that. And I didn't add, my question was what is your thought on how Danny Stutzman has grown from week 1 to week 10 or 11 right now in this season? That's what I said, Mike. That was my exact question. And he took it to another extent by saying, what was it? What was the exact words? Was it I'm trying to find the exact quote, but he said something or the other is some people think he stinks. and laughed. Like he had like this
Yeah.
sarcastic laugh. He's like, some people think he stinks, but I mean, I would hate to stink if I was averaging the most tackles in the Big 12 per game and fourth in total tackles.
Yeah.
And I
And
mean,
look,
like he's just
Danny
taking
Stutzman-
shots at people.
Danny Stutzman hasn't been perfect. Okay. And I'm not trying to sit here and make it sound like he has been. But
Right.
you also have to consider that everything is being graded on a curve this year for Oklahoma because nothing has gone great, if we're being completely honest. Eric Gray has been phenomenal, and Braden Willis has too. But especially on the defensive side of the ball, what kind of standard are you holding these guys to at this point? Because the standard in 2022 is not what it has been in years past. And at this point, it can't be. And look, that's not a trend that you want to see continue, right? If we're still having this conversation a year from now, then there are problems. But by virtue of all the turnover in the offseason, and especially when you consider that there is so little depth right now at linebacker. And as I've thought about it more and more, Brandon, it started to make more sense to me because we continually talk about how this team struggles in the fourth quarter, struggles to close out games, struggles to get off the field in crucial third down and fourth down.
He played 84 snaps Saturday,
down the
by
stretch.
the way.
But when you play 94 snaps in a football game, you're going to get worn out, right? And there's just not much of an alternative right now because that's how thin Oklahoma is at linebacker. And that'll change. They'll go into the portal for a linebacker or two this offseason, at least. They're going to bring in some studs. They're going to bring in
But they
Phil
expect
Pichotti.
Kobe and Kip to be really, really, really good.
Yeah, they're going to – Kobe and Kip are going to be grown up next year. They're going to bring in Phil Pichotti. They're going to bring in Samuel Masigo. They're going to bring in Lewis Carter. There's going to be a lot more depth at that position. But right now, that's not the case. And you're seeing Danny Stutzman and Deshaun White and David Igwebu push to their absolute physical limit. So, again, I'm not trying to sit here and make excuses for them because at the end of the day, you got to make plays down the stretch to win football games. And if you don't, guess what? You can't really sit there and point fingers when you're 5-5 because you deserve to be 5-5. But this is not the same dynamic among this Oklahoma defense that we are going to see in years to come because there's not going to arise a scenario. At least it's difficult to imagine there arising a scenario in which you are this thin at linebacker and you need so much out of your starters.
Okay, so Okie trades, not calling you out. I'm just gonna. You've said it multiple times. You obviously don't think Danny Stutzman's a very good player, and he's saying that Oklahoma needs to play all the young guys. So here's why Kip Lewis isn't playing, because as a matter of fact, I'm going to read the exact quote from Brent Venables. He doesn't BS. He's the best linebacker coach in college football over the last 20 years. He kind of knows what he's doing there a little bit. He knows who's ready and who's not. I'm just saying, he would be the last person I would go and up and argue and say, you need to play this guy. I know I'm not at practice, but I think that guy needs to play. But here's the thing is Kip Lewis barely weighs over 200 pounds. And he even talked about how he hasn't put very much weight on. He said, usually by now you've seen 8, 9, 10 pounds growth from the start of the season till now because the guys aren't playing. They do extra weight room work, all that type of stuff. It hasn't happened with Kip. He hasn't hit that point where the body starts to mature real quick and add muscle and weight on. And for Kobe, it's keeping the weight off and still continue to progress and learn and keep that speed. And he's doing a good job at it. But he even talked about how in practice, when they put Kip Lewis and Kobe in, and they're actually letting them participate and work in like game time work, they hit the wrong holes. They do this, they do that. And until they can get more consistent, they're not going to do that. They are already working with inconsistencies with Stutzman and Igwebu. Now, Stutzman's gotten a lot better about being in his hole properly all the time. in the A gap or the B gap or wherever C gap, wherever he's supposed to be, and reading his keys properly. And you don't want to have to go through that, and it costs you even more than what's already happening during the game. That would just, you're trying to win. You're not trying to continue to lose. And that's what happens when you throw a bunch of inexperience in there in a very heated part of the game. A guy like Mike Gundy is going to take full advantage of that and know exactly what to do to mess up and screw with the eyes of a Kip Lewis and a Kobe. Don't get anybody wrong. They're going to be great players. They're going to get a lot of work this spring with the ones and learn how to learn the system a little bit more and get a lot better, because Venables even said that. He expects them to be in the rotation next year with Kanik. And as a matter of fact, I would almost bet that your starting middle linebackers next year are Danny Stutzman and Jaron Kanik. I would bet money on that. Would you not, Parker?
I think you're exactly right. No, I do. Like,
I mean,
when you look at the room and you look at the guys that have the two highest ceilings and the guys that are just like, they're almost like ball magnets at times, especially Kanik, man. Like, he's just got a nose for the football, and you see it. And I think what you hope for those two, and you're not, I'm not saying you need to be worried about this because it's Brent Venables, right? But I think what you hope for those two is that sense of natural aggression that you've seen from them at over the course of the early portions of their collegiate careers doesn't get coached out of them too much, because obviously you're going to need to refine things with those two. And with Kanik being a freshman, especially in his case, right, you're going to need to channel that aggression properly if you want to get the best football out of him.
Yeah.
And so there's going to need to be some sharpening and some refinement, but you also just got to let them maintain their natural demeanor on the football field to a certain extent. And I think Brent Venables is he really is the perfect guy to be able to strike that balance such that you have two monsters at the linebacker position, the way that you had in the days of yore with Teddy Lehman and Rocky Kalmus, right? I think you hear that comparison made a lot as it regards Stutzman and Kanik. But I don't think that
the hashtag is this racist today.
But I don't think that comparison is far off base. I think
I'm just saying that's what people do.
Yeah, no, I think you have two guys that have Butkus Award finalist potential if they're coached properly over the next couple of years.
Right. No, I'm with you. We got a $4.99 super chat from Cromine One. Appreciate it. And it says, can you guys give a shout out to the Crimson and Cream campaign? Well, that was going to be one of our topics we were going to discuss here in just a bit. And I guess we might as well get into it since it was asked. They're trying to raise, I found out who the donor was, and I'm not going to say it, but it's a big name, but $1.5 million being matched by a donor to the Crimson and Cream campaign. And said donor is going to, this is my guess, is once it gets over the 1.5 million, I bet you said donor comes out and says, okay, if they get to 2.5, like a week leading up, I'll match it up to 2.5. Let's get up to $5 million guys, all that type of stuff for NIL. And you got to think about it. It's ending a week before National Signing Day. You do the math on that, folks. And I'm pretty positive it's pretty easy to figure out what's going on.
We today on the radio, Steely and I dubbed this collective, if you will. We dubbed it the BHF. You can figure out what that stands for if it's not self-evident enough.
BHF, what is that?
Bowen Hicks Fund.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. I think there may be others, honestly, that could end up surprising people that have somehow been on campus. You haven't heard much about them, and next thing you know, on National Signing Day, such and such signed with the University of Oklahoma. Damn, they haven't been back since
here's
June.
Here's the thing. That's and
that's A&M, baby. That's how they do it.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Here's what people need to understand. Brandon right now is speculating, but there's a reason why he's speculating in that fashion, right? Because those are the things you're going to start to see this cycle. You are going to start to see players who appeared 100% in with X institution, and on signing day, boom, all of a sudden they're signed with Y institution. And it's because over the last year and a half, that's how much the game has changed. And you are going to see things that you have never seen before in recruiting. And you are going to see drastic twists and turns and swings, especially late in the cycle, because there's going to be more at stake than there ever has been. And there are going to be more people that are willing and able to invest, literally and figuratively, than ever before.
Yeah, and I know people are throwing out like Samson Okunola, but he's not on the visitor list yet. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen by tomorrow, but he's not, or even Friday morning, and they get him set up for a red-eye flight or something like that. It just hasn't happened yet, so we'll see. The reason why he hasn't taken a lot of visits to a lot of games is because they don't have lights where he plays, so they have to play on Saturday mornings. Well, his season ended last week, I believe, so this would be the week he would be able to take the trip if he was going to take it. I just haven't seen it happen yet, so we'll see if even if Oklahoma's in the race anymore. Like, I'll keep digging on that, but I don't think he's on the list yet, or at least I was told he wasn't. But yeah, no. Parker, you said it right. Like, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, like, but it would be hilarious. I mean, just absolutely hilarious. Like, Reuben Bain hasn't been back since June to Oklahoma, and just all of a sudden he's signed. Like, those are the type of things that, and that was just an example, people. So do not think I'm hinting at any, because I'm totally not. That was just a random.
As first reported on this live stream.
Thanks, Parker.
Reuben Bain is signing with Oklahoma per Brandon Drumm of OUinsider.com.
No. Yeah, I'm just saying, like, that is the type of thing that you'll see. Like, because you keep hearing Miami, you hear Alabama, you hear Georgia, Florida, like those type of places for him. He did take an official to Oklahoma. He has been in communication this whole time with Todd Bates and Brent Venables. Like, they're really tight with the Miami Central staff. So that's the type of thing that you could be like, oh, okay, that's kind of crazy that happened. Like, assuming that would be like just an example of something that could happen, or it could happen against Oklahoma. Like, I mean, you never know. So, but I think you're seeing this done to try to ensure that it doesn't happen against Oklahoma, and they can match whatever somebody else is throwing at their commits last second. And two, they're going to try to go all in. Like, I wouldn't be shocked. I don't know this for a fact. I would not be shocked if by the end of the month, or at least the first week of December, like, you saw Gabe Eichert come out and say, all the collectives need to merge together. Yeah. Like, they all need to come together. That wouldn't shock me if that happened before National Signing Day. And now if that happens, there's going to be a lot of money to throw around, man. Yeah. A lot of money to throw around.
And thus far in this cycle, you've seen Bourbon money make some stuff happen. Mm-hmm. You've seen Life Wallet money make some stuff happen. Who's to say you won't see Oklahoma Oil and Gas make some stuff happen?
Yeah.
And like, here's the deal, right? It's going to be a delicate balance that you have to strike, because there are going to be some recruitments where you're going to have to be willing to open up the pocketbook. For instance, DJ Hicks, Peyton Bowen, right? Like, there's going to have to be some sort of investment, some sort of tangible investment made into those recruitments. But what you also don't want to do is you also don't want to create a culture where you're just buying a class, because we've seen how that ends, right?
Yeah, it doesn't work out very well. Yep. No, not well at all. I guess people are still saying that. I don't know, and people are still trying to talk about Jackson Arnold. Like, so when all that stuff happened, and they were talking earlier this week about a flip and all that, the Instagram stuff, and I guess On3 posted stuff saying, "Oh, the potential, this, or this." What's happening? Jackson Arnold was one of the Notre Dame people to watch. People aren't going to think it's very funny, but I think it's hilarious. Jackson texts me and goes, "Hey, go ahead and tell everybody I'm flipping and see how they react." And he had like laughing emoji going after him. Like he just ran, like I literally randomly texted me. He goes, "Have you seen this? Go ahead and tell him this is happening." He was joking, totally joking, but that's how locked in he is. Like he's literally joking about it, and he has no intentions of going anywhere and never has. He's recruiting his tail off for Oklahoma. He's also focusing on Highland Park this weekend, which I will be down at the Star to watch and talk to Peyton Bowen, who's a little nicked up. I'm not going to say, I was asked not to say what the injury is, but he is a little nicked up right now. His brother broke his collarbone, and Peyton also got hurt last week too. So, but he's still playing this week so far. At least that's what I was told Tuesday afternoon that he was still playing this week. So I intend on being down there for the game, and talking to Peyton, Eli, and Jackson before they come up on their unofficial visits this weekend for Bedlam, and obviously cover the game. So it should be fun. I still don't get why everybody freaks out about. I mean, Jackson's had big offers that he's never tweeted out, like literally never tweeted them out. And they are big offers. So one of them is one of the best teams in the country, easily one of the best teams in the country. So yeah, it's just one of those deals where he is locked in. Parker, how many times have we been asked Jackson Arnold this, Jackson Arnold that? And it's just like, at what point do they just realize like that kid is locked in?
And like it's generally, Brandon,
he has NIL set up too, by the way.
And look, we are not infallible in this profession. No one is.
Right.
But generally, we know what we're talking about, Brandon. And you've seen it this week because Jackson Arnold is obviously the shining example of a guy that is just 100% dialed in with his school. And you heard Brent Venables made a series of comments in his press conference yesterday.
Oh, about Jackson, yeah.
Where he was like, and he didn't name drop Jackson because you can't. But he made a series of comments that literally underscored how solid Jackson Arnold's commitment is. He said something effective. Hypothetically, if we had a quarterback committed and he had every offer in the country, but still he stayed loyal to Oklahoma, and I can't remember where he was going with it, but he was very obviously talking about Jackson Arnold if you were reading in between the lines. But remember all that BS? And well, okay, I shouldn't call it BS because you remember when everybody was buzzing on Saturday and Sunday about PJ Adebawore potentially flipping to Ohio State?
Mm-hmm.
Now, look, Ohio State's been in contact with PJ. That's legit. PJ's not flipping. And that won't even be he won't visit. I can promise you that. It won't be a conversation. And he came out and he told our good buddy Eric Bailey at the Tulsa World, because Eric reached out to Caden Green and PJ to ask about the status of their commitments. And PJ said, look, and if I'm not directly quoting, this is a very close paraphrase to the original quote. PJ said, if my commitment wasn't solid, I wouldn't have committed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's who the kid is right there.
Yeah.
He's no nonsense. He's no BS. And it's nice to have a 5-star at the top of your class on offense and a 5-star at the top of your class on defense that are cut from that exact same cloth.
Yeah. No, he there's several guys that are in this class that are just no nonsense. They just don't care to look around. They're happy. They're content about. I mean, you got Jacoby Johnson, Eric McCarty, Jackson Arnold, PJ Adebawore, Caden Green, Derek LeBlanc. Like, you don't hear much from Derek LeBlanc anymore. Remember how he was out there all the time before he committed? And now he's just quiet to himself, just focused on his season, the playoffs, and getting ready to get to Norman on January 14th. I even asked his dad, I said, are y'all still set? It's coming. He said, oh, yeah, ready to be Sooners, January 14th. And by the way, shout out to Ricardo LeBlanc. Thanks for watching, buddy. But yeah, that's just how it is. There was a question real quick from Bobby McKay in the super chat. Thank you so much for the $20. You guys need to watch Coach's Corner on ESPN Plus. Talked about his strategy and looking at recruits. Chris and Gabe had a great show with him. I could listen to Chavis all day, every day. I haven't seen it yet. I will go watch it after this YouTube live is up. But their strategy is always, he's talked about it before, right? He did before the beginning of the season, where he wants a guy that's going to fit in his room, that's going to have a passion for football, that obviously has the measurables, but they've got to have the heart and they've got to have a high motor. Like, that is something that Chavis looks at, because he's well and tight and he has a high motor. And I don't think anybody that can play for him and fit, they've got to have a high motor. Like PJ Adebawore has a high motor when he plays, goes constantly.
Yes.
So Taylor Wine, if he was to commit to Oklahoma, has a super high motor. That guy, if you watch his film, he just never stops and has a great frame, is a great kid from the state of Oklahoma originally. Just a lot of things that fit with Oklahoma. So I like how they recruit. They recruit guys that are from winning programs. And I think that also is essential. If you're going to fit in BV's culture and to understand the work that needs to be put in to win, you've got to come from a winning program. And I know sometimes when you get transfers in, that's not the case. And it's a learned trait at that point. And I think you're seeing a lot of that this year, where there's a lot of guys that come from in. I'm not going to name the player. So after the West Virginia game, you know who I'm talking about, Parker, but after the West Virginia game, I had a one-on-one with this guy, and I'm talking to him. This person's been around Oklahoma for a while, and he literally said, look, I'm not perfect. I've screwed up. Everybody's seen it. But there are a lot of guys on this team right now, with it being like a 45% turnover rate, and that's how much new guys we have on this roster, that don't know what it takes to have that Sooners across their chest, or what it takes to be this program and win week in and week out, because they're not from this program. They didn't come up through this program. They're still learning how to get that. And he goes, that's upon us as leaders, as captains, as kind of the elders of the team, to teach them. And we've done a bad job of that because they've never had to teach it. It's just been something that the older guys have played and won, and the younger guys have watched and learned while watching during whatever redshirt freshman year or freshman year, playing sparingly here and there, making a play or two, but they learned that way. This year, everybody's been thrown into the fire that's brand new, but they don't understand the little things that it takes to continue to win, because maybe they came from a 5-7 Tulane or a Wyoming or whatever. I'm just naming two teams off the top of my head that I know transfers came from, or Missouri or whatever, like teams that didn't win. They don't have a long history of winning. And so it's just been different, and it's going to take some time. And that person took the fault of it, said, it's my fault. I haven't shown them how to do it on the field, and I haven't shown them off the field as best as I possibly could. And that's got to be a learned trait from us too, as far as us teaching them how to become winners, because they've never had to teach that. It's just been watch and do after you've been there for a year or two. And it's rinse, wash, repeat at Oklahoma. That's how every program is that becomes really successful. But the guys now, they're learning how to win. And unfortunately, they're losing by single digits, by 1 point or by one score games, because they don't know how to make the little plays that help you get over the top and beat those teams when it matters right now. And that's unfortunate. That's super, super unfortunate for Oklahoma. And that's why they're in the position they're in. It's not good. It's not good. So you're hoping next year they figure it out. Or maybe this week at Bedlam, they figure it out going into Texas Tech. You never know. I don't know that you can teach an old dog new tricks in one during this year, but maybe you can. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that, Parker?
And at the end of the day, I think, and this is a conversation that I had on the radio yesterday with a whole bunch of listeners who chimed in, and it was a question I posed to them and kind of solicited answers. But I just asked them, what do you want to see over these last two games for Oklahoma? What would make you feel good about this season if you only had these two games and the potential bowl game to be able to draw from? And you got varying answers. But look, at the end of the day, when you evaluate this season, I think it's a disappointment in a lot of people's eyes, regardless of how these last two games of the regular season and potentially the bowl game go. It's a disappointment. And it wasn't in line with the expectations that a lot of people had. Maybe those expectations were unrealistic. Maybe the bar was set too high. And there's probably some truth to that. The bar probably was set too high. But
yeah,
as you move forward, man, one of the things that we've discussed is that I think the flush in this program is going to take longer than we anticipated. And with regard to teaching an old dog new tricks, as you mentioned, I still think there are some upperclassmen in this program that are still 100% bought in.
Yeah.
And still have some room to improve and want to be part of this program and want to show up every day and put in the work to make themselves better, to make the team better, to make the program better. So somebody asked me on radio today who the starting cornerbacks on this team are next year. And I think the question was, you see Makari Vickers starting at cornerback next year? And I said no. And that's not a slight of Makari Vickers at all. But for one, that's a very high expectation, very lofty expectation to have for a true freshman. And also, I think you got two guys coming back that are poised to do some big things by the time that they are finished at the University of Oklahoma. And those guys are Jaden Davis and CJ Colden. And when you talk about older guys that are still bought in, still doing everything the right way, and still have that fire and that enthusiasm for the University of Oklahoma, those two dudes fit the bill. And to very different senses, right? Because Jaden Davis has been here for 4 seasons. CJ Colton's been here for 5 months. And so those dudes have very different backgrounds from which they're drawing on. But when you think about two guys that have continually stood in front of the media and answered the tough questions and maintained the proper outlook and perspective on the season, despite a season that everybody regards, at least externally, as a disappointment, I'm really excited to see what those two dudes do in 2023. And you're going to have young guys in the picture. Jacoby Johnson's a guy that's going to have the capacity to play right away. Gentry Williams has such a high ceiling. We've talked about him extensively. Kenai Walker is a guy that should factor in the conversation as well. But man, there are some older guys in this program that haven't hit their peak yet. And I'm really excited to see whether it can happen for them in the final year or two that they have, however long it is, in Norman. But on the other side of the coin, you got a lot of players in this program, quite frankly, Brandon, that are just taking up space right now. And I think that's why you're going to see a lot of turnover. And we have talked about this. It's why you're going to see a lot of portal casualties this offseason.
Yeah.
And those portal casualties, and it won't be me because nobody's going to acknowledge this, right? But I'm willing to bet the majority of those portal casualties are going to be because the coaching staff gave them that push. And
Yeah.
it's about establishing a culture, and you can't establish a culture if you don't have the same level of buy-in across the board. And I think that's one of the things that we maybe took for granted, that because everybody was saying the right things, whether publicly or behind closed doors, that everybody was completely bought into not just the vision, but the grind, the task of sustaining a 12-game season, regardless of the adversity and the hiccups that came along the way. And that just wasn't the case. And so I think this is a pivotal offseason for Brent Venables and his staff, because there is so much that needs to change, and there is so much opportunity for it all to change.
And there's something to be. Are you done? No,
I am done. You go ahead.
Okay. No, I was just about to say there's something to be said for how hard the offseason was, and they weren't used to that. They were used to, as one strength and conditioning coach said, get this P90S out of here. Whenever he walked through the facility the first time. So there is a difference in philosophy. And I think you saw even in year one, back in 99 with Jerry Schmidt, it was an adjustment period for this Oklahoma team. And I know the word close is like nails on a chalkboard to Oklahoma fans. It's nails on a chalkboard to me. It's nails on a chalkboard to Parker. But when you look back at like 2007 Bama, who lost their last 4 games in Saban's first year, one of which was to University of Louisiana Monroe, by the way. They were all one possession games, kind of like what you're seeing Oklahoma go through right now. And then the very next year, they're playing for the SEC title, obviously losing to an elite Florida team who ended up winning the national title in Tim Tebow. But I guess my point is the jump can happen. It can happen. Sometimes it takes a year of transition from one culture to another, and people actually getting used to it and going, okay, they know what they're going to go through in the off season this winter. They know what they're going to go through in the spring, and they know that what they're going to go through in the summer now. Now they come prepared for that mentally, physically, emotionally. And there's a lot to be said for that. And that's where growth starts to happen from year one to year 2 in a system. And so I think you're going to see that. I'm not professing like an 11-1 year next year or anything like that, but I could see a 9-3, 8-4, 10-2 type season next year, and it get even better the year after that, where they're actually competing for the Big 12 in their final year and ready to go into the SEC, because that's ultimately the goal. I talked to one of the higher ups at Oklahoma for a good while this past Saturday, and yeah, this year, like, nobody wants to go through this type of season, but it's a wake up to everybody. It wakes everybody up. It wakes the fan base up. It wakes the donors up. It wakes the administration up. It wakes the players up. It wakes the support staff up. It wakes everybody up that has anything to do with the University of Oklahoma, from a fan's perspective to even part of the program inside the Switcher Center, knowing what needs to be done to get to the level that they want to do, because there's something to be said for complacency where this program was at. They don't have Dylan Gabriel's a good quarterback. He's going to get you 30, 40 points if receivers don't drop the ball. Like, that's what he's going to do. But he can't make the catch. He can't tackle for people. He's not Caleb Williams. We all know that. He's not Spencer Rattler of 2020. He's not Jalen Hurts. He's not Kyler Murray. He's not Baker Mayfield. Those four were elite guys during those seasons that they were at Oklahoma. And they covered up a ton of flaws, which led to the complacency of the program and of the fan base. And it's been a difficult ride to get people to wake up and see, because they were winning. They were winning the Big 12. They were making the playoffs. And there was rinse, wash, repeat every year, because they had that Superman at quarterback that was going to hide. You know what I'm saying, Parker? Like, that's what they had. And it built complacency. It did. It got to the point where it was like, okay, they're going to give up 35 points, but Oklahoma's going to score 50. And that's how they're going to win. And that was okay, because they were 11-1. And they won the Big 12, 12-1, and they're going to the playoffs. Now that they're 5-5, people are now starting to go, okay, we got to put money into this collective, Crimson and Twin Collective, which is on pace for ridiculous amounts of money right now. I don't know that happens if they're 11-1 right now, Parker. I just don't, because fans feel like, why do that? Because we're Oklahoma. We're going to win anyways. There's not that feeling now, not at 5-5.
Yeah.
So at some point, like, this actually was a blessing in disguise a little bit, right? In a little bit of way, like in a weird, demented way, like a very demented way.
Oh boy, here goes Brandon Sunshine pumping.
That's not sunshine.
No, it's completely in jest, because I understand.
No,
what
that's
you're
like
saying,
opposite of sunshine. Like they're playing like crap, but it's actually a blessing in disguise, because it's woken up a lot of things that need to be fixed.
Yeah, because look, here's the thing. If nothing changed last season to this year, if absolutely nothing changed, we might have just gotten to the point where in perpetuity, Oklahoma went 12-2 every year and either lost in the college football playoff semifinal or ended up a whisper away from the college football playoff field, because again, you would have had a lot of records that were inflated, and you did have records that were inflated for a time by really good quarterback play, elite quarterback play. I will go so far as to say that Oklahoma was no better than 7-5 in 2018 with any other human being besides Kyler Murray at quarterback. Literally, you can stick anyone else at the helm of that offense, and Oklahoma is not even close to 12-1 that year.
Correct.
And so it would have been more of the same, man. It would have been more of the same. You would have had elite quarterback play, and you would have had all kinds of endemic issues across the rest of your program and the rest of your roster that got disguised and got sugar-coated, because you'd win a lot of those games.
Yep.
And I think at a certain point, you have to be willing to part with, and it feels weird saying this, but at a certain point, you have to be willing to part with the standard that has been established and step out and take a bit of a risk if you want to blow past that standard, and if you don't regard that standard as good enough. And at the University of Oklahoma, it's not good enough, right?
Nope.
It's not good enough to be winning double-digit games a year, yet never sniffing a championship. And that had become par for the course. And granted, Oklahoma didn't really have a choice but to change. They didn't have a choice but to tear this thing all down, because Lincoln Riley heading for USC was the first domino that set off that Rube Goldberg machine. But man, I think it is good for this program long term that they are enduring a season like the one they are enduring right now.
Yeah.
And again, some people may regard that as pumping sunshine. Some people may regard that as eternal optimism. But Yeah, I'm sure I'm not the only one that sees it this way. And
No,
I'm not hearing you talk about it.
Georgia was 10-3 the year before Kirby got there. They were 7-5 his first season, and lost
this
to, who
is
did they lose to? That was just
Vanderbilt.
awful.
They lost to Vanderbilt.
It was no, they lost somebody else too, didn't they? That was worse than that.
I don't know. But yeah,
I have
man,
to look now. Go ahead.
sometimes you need a little wake up call as a program. And I think that's what this season has been for Oklahoma in a lot of different ways. A lot of different ways.
Yeah, so I'm looking up their football schedule, and it was Nicholls State. They lost to Nicholls State.
No, that didn't actually
Yes,
happen.
that actually happened. Wait. No, hold on. No, wait, hold on. They didn't lose to Nicholls. Hold on. I read that wrong.
Okay, thank the Lord. I was about to be like, why is this not being talked about more?
I thought they lost to Nicholls State. I could be wrong. They won 26-24 against Nicholls State,
Ugh.
which isn't, yeah. I mean, yeah. And they lost 45-14 to Ole Miss.
They lost to
And
Georgia Tech that year. That
they
was the
lost to
last time
Georgia Tech. They lost to
beat them.
Florida. Yep. So, yeah, but they were 10-3 the year before, and they had a down year, Kirby's first season, but yet they still ended up with a great recruiting class, and that recruiting class propelled them to what they became and what they are now, honestly. And I mean, you look at, like I said, you look at Bama and Saban's first year, and I know people are like, oh, there's no way Venables is going to do that, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, we don't know, but there's a lot of eerily similar things that are going on with all three of those seasons with Georgia, Bama, and Oklahoma as far as one possession losses. And that's essentially what all these were. You can throw out the Texas and the TCU. Oklahoma didn't have a quarterback at that point. But when they have been healthy at quarterback, these one possession losses, because they don't know how to win. They don't know how to win. And and they find stupider, and that's not even a word, but I'm going to say it. They find stupider and stupider ways to lose ball games. Like dumb ways to lose ball games. It's nauseating to watch, even up in the press box. It's rough, and I'm sure it's even more nauseating on the field when you get to see it like right there happen right in front of you. Talking about you, Parker.
Do you want to nauseating is not a strong enough word for what I endured this past Saturday.
Cold, wet, rainy, miserable.
That was the worst.
Yeah.
That was the worst experience I've ever had covering a college football game.
Oh, some of the things that we said when we saw each other when you were walking by, there was just like, well, it's just one of those days. We'll just leave it at that. So, yeah, I had that gif where the little kid shot himself with the BB gun right in the pee-pee. And that's exactly what it was to watch on Saturday.
Well, on that note,
okay, real quick, how many commits this week potentially? If I gave you the 1.5 as the betting line, would you go over or under?
How long after Saturday are we setting the window?
7 days.
We'll go under. I'll say they get one.
Okay.
I'll say they get one within 7 days.
What if I said 14 days?
I'd up it. I'd say 2 within 14 days. 2 by December. I'll say that.
2 by December out of Kendall Dolby, Ashton Sanders, and Taylor Wine. You've got only 2.
Yes.
By National Signing Day, out of all the visits, and I set it from this weekend's visits, and I set it at 3.5.
Over.
Where you at?
Over. Yep. Maybe substantially over.
You heard it there first. Parker Thune giving you all some potentially high expectations come National Signing Day. All right, and you're willing to do it. That's fine.
You know
I'm
at
going to
this
say
point,
push.
I'm speaking it into existence.
Yeah, there you go.
I
5.
need some nice things to
Jimmy
happen.
Satterfield said 5. They're going to have 5. So I'll say over 2. Yeah, I think over. That's probably your safe bet. Is over. I think Oklahoma does a fantastic job this weekend. What is your prediction on the game?
Well, I don't think
Mhm.
Oklahoma's going to win. I don't. And this
Mhm.
is really the first time in, oh gosh,
I
definitely
got
as long as
y'all's
I'm,
back, Sooner fans. Don't worry about it. Even
this
though
is
I
the
may not
first
believe it,
time
I'm
since
going
I've
to
been
say it.
covering the team that under normal circumstances, I've just been like, yeah, I don't see them winning. Obviously the Texas game was, those circumstances were anything but normal.
Yep.
Like, this is really the first time where I've gone into a weekend just kind of sitting here like, yeah, there's really no reason to feel great about this one. And so
Mhm.
and look, I think it's going to be a close game, and I got to see Oklahoma win a close game before I can believe that they will win a close game. So
Mhm.
I will say Oklahoma State wins this football game 27-20. That is my prediction.
I said it on the post-game podcast that I thought that I did it just to be positive because I wanted some sort of positivity after we completely ripped into Oklahoma for an hour. So I guess I'm going to stick with it. I was joking, and I don't know that I believe this is going to happen, but I'll just predict it anyways. 33-30 Oklahoma. 33-30 Oklahoma. I don't feel good about it. I could see it being completely the other way, 33-30 Oklahoma State too, very easily. As a matter of fact, I would probably lean that way, but since I said Oklahoma's going to win on the post-game podcast, I'm sticking with it. I'm sticking with my guns, Parker. So,
Okay.
even if I don't
There you
believe
go.
it. So,
Insincere CFB picks with Brandon Drumm.
yes. All right. That's gonna do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners YouTube Live. If you're not a subscriber to this YouTube channel, subscribe. There's a lot of content every day on here. It's a really cool channel. If you guys like Oklahoma content on a daily basis, this is the place for you. If you're not a member of OU Insider VIP, you can do that right now. $1 for the first month, $9.95 afterwards, and we will have a lot of information as far as this week's visitors coming. So you're going to want to be on OU Insider. We will have tons of information with that. We will have tons of information on the team, all sorts of. I've got a story coming that is going to enthrall a lot of people and get a lot of discussion. What has gone right this year and what has gone wrong? Obviously, a lot has gone wrong, and I'm not going to dive into everything that's gone wrong this year, but it's essentially a state of the program write up. It's got it coming here either Thursday or Friday. Still working on the nuts and bolts with that. Got through a good portion of it, but still kind of fine tuning little bits and pieces here because I want it to be as good as it possibly can be for you guys. But I think it's going to be an interesting read. I will say that. And it's going to dive into a lot of donation stuff. It's going to dive into a lot of administration stuff. It's going to dive into a lot of player personnel stuff and obviously players that have shown up this year or have gotten better during the season, players that need to get better, players that have seemingly regressed, how I feel the transfer portal stuff is going to work out. Not necessarily naming players, but just the fact of this, that, or the other. There's going to be a lot of information in that, a lot of the State of the Union address kind of leading into the last few games of the season. So I think it's going to be a really fun read for you guys. And to get that, you need to be on OU Insider. VIP, $1 for the first month, $9.95 afterwards. It's coming in the next 48 hours or so. So it'll be kind of a pregame thing for you guys. So, yeah, if you don't want to do the $1 for the first month, $9.95 afterwards, 30% off right now. $75 gets you OU Insider and gets you every single VIP on 24/7 Sports. That means Alabama, A&M, Georgia, Texas, Oklahoma State, USC, Ohio State, Clemson, whatever you want to go look at. If Oklahoma is recruiting up against somebody, you can find out what they're saying about said target on their board and kind of put the information together and figure out what you believe and what you don't believe, or what some sources are saying over there compared to what some sources are saying over here, all that type of stuff. You can only do that on OU Insider, VIP, and 24/7 Sports. And that's something we're very proud of. All right. That's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visors YouTube Live. For Parker Thune, for Spencer Forsythe, you guys have a blessed day. We will see you guys on the podcast and then the post-game podcast after Bedlam. Have a blessed day.